We might be a golf school again. We might have too many injuries in football to win. And Bryan Nardo's 3.35 has been a failed experiment. So is it time to see it gone so soon?
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at Aldeo State. Today, we are partially brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment matter more. Right now, you can make a $5 bet and get started with $200 back in bonus bets. Guaranteed. Make sure you visit FanDuel.com to get started today. Meanwhile, we get started in the conversation of Bryan Nardo. And you guys all know how I feel about Bryan Nardo, the story of how he got here. Originally, a lot of people were up in arms about, well, why would Mike Gundy go after, a Division III guy and Bryan Nardo? Is it the best we can get? Mind you, it was fresh off of luring Derek Mason away from Auburn. So I don't think it's a case of that's all we could get. I think it's obviously a case of Mike Gundy trying to go against the grain a little bit and find a diamond in the rough that would be loyal and stick around for a long time. Now, that's a catch-22 if that's your objective as a coach, right? Sometimes you have to ride that fine line of, is it all about development, knowing if you develop so well you might leave, or is it more about controlling the situation and mitigating any of the exigent circumstances that you cannot control? I think a lot of it for Mike Gundy is more on the control side of things, which is another reason why I do think it's fair to keep Bryan Nardo around a little bit longer. Hear me out here. I think next season there should be a contingency plan put in place that if Bryan Nardo doesn't have a drastic improvement from where we are now in the first 6 games of next season, then he's gone. And then throughout that, the remainder of the season, maybe it be Joe Bob to take over. I know a lot of people thought Joe Bob was going to get the job from the get-go, but I did a lot of research into Bryan Nardo, and I found out so many things about Bryan Nardo that were going to make him different than most everybody else, which is why he is very successful on the recruiting trail, and he's good at getting in some living rooms that we hadn't been able to get into previously. But the 3.35 that Iowa State has is clearly not the 3.35 that Bryan Nardo has brought to Oklahoma State. But furthermore, the implementation might be a little skewed, right? If you look by the numbers, it's not all horrendous for Bryan Nardo. It's not good, right? I'm not going to sit here and pretend otherwise, but it's not the worst thing in the world either. And if you look, Oklahoma State, right, we're 10th in the Big 12 in sacks. We're 4th in the Big 12 in interceptions. We're 13th in fumbles forced, so obviously we need to do better there. We're 7th in fumbles recovered, right? So nothing good, nothing terrible for the most part, just kind of is what it is. And then you go look about some of the individual statistical leaders. Of course, we all know that Trey Rucker and Nick Martin were 1 and 2 in the Big 12 in tackles. Not only that, they were one of the top 4 in the country in tackles collectively as well. And then even outside of just those two dudes, Trey Rucker and Nick Martin, if you go to tackles for loss, I know it might be somewhat surprising, but another Gannon product, Obi Ezigbo, is 6th in the Big 12 in tackles for loss. And that's the fun fact. Obi Ezigbo keeps showing up on some of these statistical categories. Obi Ezigbo, it was another individual that came over from Gannon University, and he's able to be top 14 in the Big 12 in sacks as well. This is a guy who wasn't even necessarily the starter until he had an injury to Colin Oliver. And then I think Corey Black has left a lot to be desired for being, a big-time senior kind of guy, but he is 2nd in the Big 12 and passes defended. And then you keep going down the board. Interceptions, Corey Black is 4th in the Big 12 in interceptions. Trey Ruckers is 6th in the Big 12 in interceptions. And then circle back around Obi Ezigbo. Guys, if Bryan Nardo was absolutely trash at this job, then Obi Ezigbo would be terrible, right? But he noticed something about Obi at Gannon, knew it was good enough to be at this level, play at this level, so he brought him here. And obviously, Obi Ezigbo has been extremely productive and one of the few bright spots with all the injuries that have popped up throughout the course of the season. So identification of talent's not an issue. Look at David Kabongo. I think a lot of us understand that Landon Cleveland, when healthy, is going to be a different animal. The only player on the field that can potentially outrun Nick Martin, the linebacker, is a true freshman in Gunnar Wilson. Then you have guys like Tamarick Johnson, Jonathan Agumadu. Armstrong Nodum dealt with an injury early, but I'm sure the rehabilitation process is going to put him in an advantageous position moving forward. And now we have some more injuries that have popped up, which should put more young cats in pivotal roles. The scheme from Bryan Nardo has been extremely unsatisfactory. His version of the 3-3-5 was predicated upon pressure. We can't get pressure. Therefore, his version is not going to work. Clearly, the issue has been making an adjustment. That is the head-scratching moment of all of this. He's had time to make adjustments, but identification of the best players and identification of guys that you need to get into Oklahoma State and doing a good job on the recruiting trail to convince them to come here, those are all one thing. Unfortunately, Oklahoma State, when you look at a different sport like basketball, we are kind of used to having somebody that recruit top-notch, but never being able to X's and O's it into being something worth material. I think that the young guys, when they do get on the field, they do show that they do provide a little bit more. So with some of the injury bug, I would expect to see more of the young guys. And if the young guys do what David Kabongo was able to do, then I think that definitely shows us that we're on the right trajectory. When it comes to some of the developmental areas, guys, Trey Rucker's development has been absolutely phenomenal, as has Nick Martin. I think Colin Oliver, you could easily see the uptick there. We haven't really got to see the opportunity what Justin Wright can do, but he's got a lot of the things in his repertoire that we've needed throughout the course of the season. I'm not saying he's the missing ingredient, the missing piece, but I am saying that Bryan Nardo maybe shouldn't be rushed out of Dodge too quick. I know that we're like 94th in the country in total defense, which is unacceptable. It is horrendous. It does need to have some ramifications to some degree, but I buy in too much to the youth side of this equation for Bryan Nardo. And before we jump to segment 2, I will leave you with this. With the amount that Mike Gundy does like to kind of control the hiring process and get some of the diamonds in the rough, and we all know logically it's because he's going to have a little bit more control over the situation. Could it possibly be that we have seniors or upperclassmen that are getting NIL money from the donors, and Bryan Nardo is being, I don't want to say forced, but highly encouraged to play certain guys? Because if you look at some of the dudes on the field that we know are getting NIL money that are extremely underperforming, yet they keep being out there. That's head-scratching. I don't think that Bryan Nardo's unintelligent. I'm sure Bryan Nardo can even see from a film perspective, love the dude, but he just can't figure it out. I like this guy, I like his tenacity, but physically he's just not quite there yet. Whatever the case may be, Bryan Nardo, I would assume, is good enough to see on film where the deficiencies are. Yet he's clearly not able or capable of making the proper adjustments to find the right remedies. But again, it is very possible that Bryan Nardo is being kind of pushed onto who should be on the field and who shouldn't, regardless of what his input is. I think that's one of the reasons why Mike Gundy was so willing to not only give Casey Dunn the promotion, but keep Casey Dunn around for as long as he has, because I would imagine Casey Dunn probably doesn't get the opportunity to do a whole lot of pushback. Again, if you revert back to the idea that he potentially was over the Alan Bowman show after Utah, but then he was forced to keep Alan Bowman in the game. That means that there's somebody pulling some strings to our coordinators, telling them how things should be dictated. I understand the CEO role. I think Mike Gundy has earned and deserved that CEO role kind of capability. But at the same time, when does micromanagement become so much of an issue that it's a limitation? I keep saying let the young guys go, and every time we let young guys go, specifically freshmen, they're able to produce at a pretty wild level. So this is even more of a reason why I feel like the young guys love Bryan Nardo so much, because they feel like maybe the world hasn't seen everything that this group should be able to do, which is why I want one more recruiting class with Bryan Nardo. I want at least a half a year to see if he can actually take that next tick up. I don't think it needs to take an entire season, though. Like, we should be able to see by week 6, by week 7 next season, if Bryan Nardo has in fact made the adjustments necessary. And if he's got the freshmen and sophomores that he needs to kind of make the system work a little bit more beneficial for him, then we should be able to see that next season. Casey Dunn's had plenty of time to prove it and hasn't done it. Same with Charlie Dickey, Jason McIndoe, Tim Rattay. And of course, yesterday we mentioned Zach Robinson being the savior. I do have an update and bad news in that department. I got a few messages basically insinuating that it'll never happen. So I did some more digging and found out that there is some bad blood between Zach Robinson and Mike Gundy, just like there's bad blood between Josh Henson and Mike Gundy. It is weird that some of the top candidates that are former Cowboys haven't really had a ton of association with us. And to hear, even if it's a fraction of a possibility, that guys like Josh Henson and Zach Robinson aren't exactly enthralled with the idea of coming back to work for Gundy, with Gundy, whatever the case may be, that also I would assume would be problematic. Bryan Nardo's defense is problematic. The inability to adjust, problematic. But I also think that he doesn't have all of his guys doing what he thinks he needs to have done at the same time. So maybe we'll give it a little bit more time. But if not, maybe he should get his LinkedIn career started because he might be job searching him for too long. I'm sorry, buddy, but the job performance has not been there. Therefore, I think you should stay. I think we should give you another year, but you never know. And LinkedIn is the best in the business to help you get back into business of any kind, really. You need to hire professionals like a professional by using the professionals of LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find the most qualified candidates faster, and you can do it today with LinkedIn Jobs, with all the tools, all the right professionals to find the right hires. It is not your run-of-the-mill typical job board. They hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else. Even those who aren't exactly even searching for a new job might be open to the perfect role if you were to find them and call. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users do not visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking at LinkedIn, you're clearly in the wrong place. 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate in the first 24 hours. Again, hire professionals like a professional by using the professionals of LinkedIn. They know that you're juggling so many different acts and wearing so many different hats and capes that you don't have the same time and resources as you did previously to hire. That's why LinkedIn is the best in the biz, with 2.5 million small businesses using LinkedIn for hiring. Make sure that you go post your job for free today at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Again, that is linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Go there today, post your job for free. And of course, terms and conditions do in fact apply. The terms and conditions for Bryan Nardo and everybody in general, the coaching office navigating all these injuries. You know, we talked earlier in the season about how the 3 deep was likely the most athletic we've ever had at Oklahoma State. And again, when we do see some of the young guys pop in there, it does make a little bit of sense. But coming into the season, a lot of people were defensively going to lean on Nick Martin, Colin Oliver, but Kendall Daniels was supposed to be part of that equation as well. And of course, between all the returning guys and Xavier Ross and Cody Walterscheid and Jaleel Brown and Deshaun Brown, or Jaleel Johnson, Deshaun Brown, Justin Kirkland, Colin Clay, between all of those guys, we'd all assume that we were going to get enough push to make it work. Well, it's not happening. And then you have Colin Oliver go down. You have Nick Martin go down. Justin Wright went down earlier. That's all your linebackers right there. Then you have to kind of help scoot Kendall Daniels up to a position that he's clearly not cerebrally quite ready for. And then you start having injuries in the back end as well. And now we find out that Cam Epps has torn his ACL. So we're going to have to call upon yet another safety to kind of make an emergence here. I will say somebody like a Parker Robertson does give us a little bit of a breath of fresh air when it comes to realization that some of the younger guys developmentally are likely good to go. Parker Robertson was a walk-on that was, given a scholarship because he earned it on scout team. And when he gets out on the field, it's visibly not a gimme, oh, great, we're going to let the 3 deep guy go. He's actually legitimately contributing on the field, and he looks like a power 4 all day, every day starter. So we need more of that. We're going to have to see more of that. With David Kabongo would be another option to step up here. I've always been extremely intrigued by Taiwan Ray Jr. I think he's a lot like Ike Esenwoon, just obviously a little bit of a different position. That's another name that we've seen little glimpses of is Ike Esenwoon. But with Justin Wright being 100% ready to rock and roll now, maybe that changes things a little bit. Jeff Robertson. He has, I think, been better. Our tackling is just so horrendous. Like, that is a case study as well. Last season, we do know that we had to go full intensity for the latter half of the season. And this is by Mike Gundy's own words, because the guys just weren't getting it. The physicality, the tenacity, it just wasn't there. So they kicked it into high gear and they went full contact, full speed, virtually every day for weeks on end. And they knew by doing that, it was going to equal a bunch of injuries. Well, we're not doing that this year, which is a byproduct of why we can't tackle on air is, we were, I don't know, maybe too reserved. And now you're having all these injuries pop up at a wild time. And then not even to mention you have Ollie Gordon's situations obviously up in the air. Brennan Presley's so banged up that he's not even going to practice all week, nor should he. I mean, he's only, 12, 15-ish? It could be like 20. He's a little ways off, all right, from, it might be 20-something. The all-time receiving record, I think that's something he's earned and deserved, so we want to give him the opportunity to get that, but he's banged up. And then Dalton Cooper, obviously, he's banged up as well, which is why you're going to have Isaiah Glass and Jake Springfield out there. With Isaiah Glass at left tackle, Springfield at right tackle. It's good to have Jake Springfield back. He did look good in the Utah game. This injury situation, it's starting to become extremely problematic, primarily on the defensive side of the ball. And again, that is another reason why it's hard for me to get up in arms about Bryan Nardo, because, it's been abysmal. But at the same time, the number of snaps that everybody's playing, the amount of catapult tracked miles that the guys are running on the field, like we talked a couple weeks ago, in week 5, they had tracked more than at week 9 of last season, right? So they were getting used and abused, and unfortunately, it's caught up to them. And more unfortunately, we still got plenty of football games left. And it does appear as though that we're going to roll with Alan Bowman again. Why? Because Mike Gundy just is obsessed with going with the wrong guy 24/7. But maybe he could shock the world, surprise us all, and we do get to see a little bit of Mailuyake Smith out on the field. Let the 6'4", 207-pound freshman that runs a 4.59 40, just let him go. Like, go any given Sunday, right? You're playing ball in the neighborhood, in the street, run around, have some fun, make some plays. That's better than the offense that we've been getting. That's better than the traditional offense that we can typically get out of Casey Dunn. So with all of the injuries that continue to pile up, I think we have to find more creative and more innovative ways to win ball games, because at the end of the day, we do still want to win, regardless of, whether we make a bowl game or not. There's reasons for each one of these individual dudes to make a good impression, to put something on film for next season, regardless of what it looks like. This injury bug it's pretty bad. I mean, when you're missing all of your linebackers and a couple different safeties and a couple different corners and a couple different offensive linemen and a running back, a couple running backs when you take into consideration AJ Green as well. I think that if we'd been taking care of business like we should have been, and let's say we only have one loss, then managing this workload with the injuries, I think, does make a whole lot more sense. But again, that is the reason why I had mentioned, even if Ollie Gordon is cleared to say 85%, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for him. And it doesn't really make sense for us as university to put himself in a bad spot. That might be why some of the former players, have some grievances with the way things were handled. I don't know. We shall see. Time shall tell, but we should also try to tell you how to make some money, honey. You already know it's FanDuel time. Whenever you are trying to find the bets that are going to inspire you, you got to get with FanDuel. FanDuel Sportsbook is the official partner of the NFL, and we love our NFL dudes. Right now, you have a big opportunity to get a return with FanDuel with the NFL. When you get that hunch in the middle of the game, you get the tingling sensation, you can feel it in your loins that something big's about to happen, and you're about to flip the game on its head, you can now check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more from the same place where you place your bets from. You can get started today with $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Place that $5 bet, get your 200 bones back in bonus bets guaranteed. Make sure that you go to FanDuel.com. Do it today. Get squared away. The NFL is going to pave your way to potentially have a payday. So we talked a little bit about the golf school stuff, and we won another trophy. And why that is important is I have bagged on Alan Bratton because we have gone down significantly ever since Victor Hovland and Matt Wolff left. Well, now we know we've got a miniature of Victor Hovland kind of coming up. Ironically enough, though, he was the only golfer that lost today. But we did win by a score of 4-1 against SMU in match play. And the more digging you do, whenever you say, oh, does this mean we're back? It actually might be, because the heralded freshman who lost to Sides, that dude is good. Sides is legitimately one of the top golfers in America. And our true freshman was able to hang with him the whole time, from Sweden to Stillwater to almost getting himself an individual trophy. Nonetheless, we did get the W. We got the trophy. We got to bring it home, which is pretty cool because it was right in OU's backyard. And we're young. So outside of that freshman, the other 4 guys that we brought on the trip that were able to do some winning were all sophomores. And then if you look even deeper than that, we have like, 5 freshmen, 5 sophomores, and 1 junior. That's our golf team. So as much crap as I've given Alan Bratton and to some degree Chad Weiberg for allowing our golf program to fall, it's somewhat similar to wrestling, right? We went from competing for national titles all the time, 24/7, year after year after year. It was the expectation, to then getting 3rd and then 4th and then 7th and then outside the top 25. But now we're young, and it appears as though the youth is really good. And we've also got, some guys behind them that are going to be able to push, that are all very young as well. So if this team continues to win at this clip, play at this clip, then the conversation of Oklahoma State Golf School could be back here before too long. Hats off to SMU for making a valiant effort. Hats off to Sides, though. That mother trucker is good at golf, and he's good where it matters the most, and that's when you get closest to the green. Chip shots, he doesn't really stress. Putts doesn't really seem to bother him a whole heck of a lot. So it's nice to see, because we need natty number 54. We might get natty number 54 out of cross country, who remains the number 1 ranked team in America. Women's cross country also rolled in the top 20 at number 18 in the country. We've got some things going. Obviously, we mentioned soccer having only 1 loss and a good shot at playing for a Big 12 title. We mentioned softball, 74 runs while only giving up 2 throughout the course of fall ball. This could be an exciting year, which we kind of need to take away some of the hurt of football. And basketball, Steve Lutz is in on a big 6'8" power forward that just put out his top 4. He's a 4-star. And we got a battle with Auburn, Purdue, and Vanderbilt was a little perplexing. But nonetheless, Steve Lutz is going to probably be that old school stuff, that Eddie Sutton style that we've kind of been yearning for a little bit now. And if he can get the recruiting at least somewhere even close to what Mike Boynton and Travis Ford did, then we're in really good shape. All right, y'all. We're going to do an extra special episode because we have a lot to cover in wrestling. Our fearless leader has an opportunity at a world title, but he's going up against, arguably, pound for pound, the greatest international wrestler of all time. This is being pegged by Flow Wrestling as the biggest match of the year and one of the biggest matches of all time, right? That's their words, not mine. I'm not a wrestling expert, but we're going to bring on a wrestling expert to help us in that category. Until then, that's all we're going to have for this one right here. As always, you know I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here in Locked On Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere. So happy you choose to be here. Like it if you like the daggone thing. Dislike if you don't. That's okay too. More importantly, share, comment, and subscribe. My podcast and people out there. You're the bricks, the bread, the butter, the fountain, the fondue, the funky stuff, the funny stuff. You're all of it. I appreciate you. I love you. Hit the stars, leave a review. Do what you do. All righty, y'all. We're out of here. Later, my taters.